Okay. All right.
Okay.
Dum, da, da, dum, da, da, dum. Rawhide. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Why don't we do a roll call and we'll ease on into this meeting.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Dowd,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Freeling,
Present.
Harrison,
Here.
Hinkleman, Najeri,
Here.
Here.
Pittsburgh,
Here.
Allrat,
Here.
Werfel,
Here.
Yarborough,
Present.
Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 present.
Thank you. Before we get to Mike, who's on the screen up in Lansing, let's do the minutes. We're gonna do requisition review later. So any issue with the minutes, or is there a motion to approve them?
Motion made.
Moved by Pitchford. Is there support? Supported by Freeling. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved. Ryan.
So members of the board, we have Mike Crombeen. Mike has agreed we're going to have him back. We will pull him in for a much longer presentation at one of the upcoming committee of the holes. We'll have then a rotating schedule to have him in front of you. For today, we're on a reduced schedule. We've only got about 10 to 15 minutes of his time. If you have questions for Mike, activate your mic. That's the only way he will be able to hear you. All right, Mike, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm here. And what I'll do, I
Go ahead
do
and get
apologize.
started.
Can you hear me? Yes? Brian, can you hear me? Maybe? Hello?
So on here, I can see it moving.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Mike, yeah, can you start over again? We lost you for a second.
Yeah, no problem. I apologize for the reduced time schedule this morning. We've got a meeting with the Senate Chair of Appropriations in our office here at 8:45. I'm gonna kind of fly through some of this stuff because
And Mike, we've lost you again. If you want to turn your video off, that might clear up some bandwidth.
Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
go ahead. Yes.
Sorry for that. I'm going to try to fly through this so I can answer some questions for folks before I have to drop for a meeting with the Senate Chair of Appropriations. But we are going to be doing a tour. I'll be down there tomorrow. We do have Congressman Huizenga and Senator Nesbitt. He is the Republican leader in the Senate, the minority leader, talking about specifically capital improvement needs in the county. With sort of a focus on the jail facility, which obviously some of you joined us for our tour in December with Joey Andrews as well. So we're excited for that. We are expecting the Spark grants to be announced yet this week. And of course, the Robin grant process is open application here for another, I think, 40-ish days, if I'm doing my countdown right. The legislature started here January 11th was the official swearing in. So we're about 3 weeks into actual work. The docket that was sent over to the county has a number of bills that we're tracking, but all of those are completely editable. I want to highlight just a couple of things. What you'll see in there broadly is that we continue to add basically every appropriations bill to it. Those appropriation bills, when they're introduced, are often shell bills, meaning they don't contain any actual dollars or actual programs to them, but they get changed along the way. And so any appropriations bill is a vehicle for potential state funding. You'll also see there's some general property tax act bills that are in there related to tax tribunals. Again, those are types of bills that can be edited along the way. What we try to do is flag anything that might have some bearing on the county one way or another. We can remove bills if there's of no interest to the county. We can add additional bills and then we can add notes to it. And so, I guess I'm not expecting, for example, this entity to maybe weigh in on the prevailing wage fight. That will be a big sort of Democrat versus Republican fight up here in Lansing. But there's potential real costs in whatever that prevailing wage bill looks like on, potential capital projects or improvements that the county would go into. And so I know as we start the new session, that's maybe a newer document that you guys are looking at as we're adding legislation to it. But just know that that's completely editable along the way as well. We are expecting some more spending upcoming. So very quickly, last week, they did pass their first spending bill. It passed mostly on party lines. Typically at the end of the year, the legislature does what's called a close of book supplemental. The new democratically controlled legislature, in tandem with the Democratic governor, did spend some ARPA dollars and some other dollars on some programming. That was in the email I sent last week. There may be some programs and grant funding of interest there, particularly around the placemaking grants.
Hey, Mike, this is Brian. Your Zoom connection continues to fail. I'm going to call your cell phone and just put you on that way.
Sounds good.
All right. Speak loudly. This is a little different way to do it, but we'll make it work. Go ahead.
I apologize for that. The annual budget process will kick off Wednesday when the governor provides her executive budget recommendation. The joke in Lansing is that the governor proposes and the legislature disposes, but that will start the annual budget process. Last week, they did pass a supplemental funding bill with some ARPA dollars and some general fund dollars, mostly on party lines. There are some grant programs. Most of what was in that budget was state programs through LEO, but I would encourage the county to take a look at the blight elimination grants and the placemaking grants, which may provide some opportunities for specific projects that you are looking at. A lot of those grants, like the placemaking grants, I believe are capped at $1 million a pop. So, those things are not going to fund full facilities, but may be useful in, stacking dollars for certain projects. I'm thinking about maybe the beach playground project. That's part of a SMART grant as well. But take a look at those. I do want to pause, and I apologize if some of this was in and out given the technology, but I've got just 2 minutes here before I've got to get to the chair of appropriations, and I want to be able to answer any questions that may have come up.
Go ahead.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Mike, this is Commissioner Pitchford. I have a question about the short-term rental bills. Where are they right now, and what is the legislature with being democratically controlled?
Yeah,
how is it different?
Good question. So we were successful in killing those bills at the end of last session. They have yet to be reintroduced. We do expect that different versions of those will be reintroduced. I've had some conversations with Michigan Township Association, Michigan Municipal League, some labor unions, and the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. All of those entities were opposed to the bills last session and working in tandem to kill them. Those organizations, I think, do have some interest in coming up with a proactive piece of legislation that would not gut local control, and being proactive in seeing if we could pass a short-term rental act that those organizations would support. But nothing's been reintroduced just yet. We're sort of in the work group phase on that. On the opposite side, Airbnb, realtors, the folks that were pushing the bill that the locals opposed last year, I'm sure are gearing up for reintroduction to continue the same fight. But at this point, there are no bills introduced on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So members of the board, we're dealing with some tech issues today.
if anyone's interested, 12:30, we have BC Bit, where we're going to be continuing to work on improving broadband coverage. Mike is going to pop into that. There is funding that's being pushed by the state. I will have Mike back here. We will pick some dates, starting with late February, early March, and we'll spend 20 to 30 minutes with Mike and go into this with a lot more detail. To the full board, Mike has helped to line up. Congressman Huizenga will be at our jail tomorrow. I've asked the executive committee to join that. The sheriff's going to lead a tour of the jail. We'll talk capital needs for that building as well as the overall county. Senator Nesbitt will be there as well. We'll be leaning on those two to visit you all for a public meeting, and then we'll continue working to secure time with Senator Lindsay, Representative Paquette, Representative Wenzel. So I apologize for the tech issues today. If there's no questions for Mike, we'll have him back here in a few weeks and we can have a much more lengthy discussion. Any questions that you have, email them to me. I will connect you with Mike. We will get your questions answered. Mike, I know you gotta go. All right. All right, sorry about that, folks. That's best laid plans.
Okay, the prosecutor, Steve Perangeli, is here. The perangulator, I almost said, so that would be a movie title, maybe. Anyway, Steve has a report.
Thank you. I hope my connection issues are better than Mike's. I mean, I'm that inept with technology, so they may not be. But thank you for having me here. Mr. Doucette contacted me on Sunday and told me I'm going to report to you guys and generally on the prosecutor's office. So when he says jump, I do. So my name is Steve Perangeli. I work at the prosecutor's office I know there's a couple new commissioners here. So I've been there for 18 years now, a little over 18 years at this prosecutor's office. Prior to that, I was a prosecutor in Golden, Colorado, Jefferson County. I went to law school at the University of Colorado. But just as the general setup for our office, just so you guys are aware of what we do generally, we have 22, when we're fully staffed, we have 22 attorneys in our office. Right now, as of today, we're going to be 3 short. That's okay. We have replacements coming in, hopefully, over the next few months. But sometimes we run short on our prosecutors because I won't hire just anybody into the position that wants a job. You have to want to be a prosecutor. It's an important job to me. It's important to have passion for the job. So we will hold out for good candidates when it's appropriate. The type of things that we handle, generally, we always have the adult criminal court running 5 days a week, basically. We also handle the family division, which is juvenile delinquency. Our office also represents the Department of Health and Human Services for neglect and abuse cases. So we represent them. It's very important to me, and I make sure that we have a very strict dividing line between if we get a neglect and abuse case come in and we have a family division representing the Department of Health and Human Services. We have 3 attorneys in the family division. They do not get involved with the adult criminal case. They represent DHHS. That is what they're ethically obligated to do and represent to the best of their ability. Our adult prosecutors handle the criminal side, and there's no intermingling there, ethically speaking. That's important to me. We also handle personal protection orders and follow through if there's any violations of them for contempt hearings, mental health petitions. We do forfeitures, drug forfeitures, and other criminal forfeitures in our court. We have an appellate division because we handle all of our own appeals in-house. We do not farm them out to anybody else. We handle everything. We're kind of a one-stop shop. As for the adult criminal side, we have 5 adult criminal divisions up in St. Joe. We have 1 down in Niles. We have 12 adult trial attorneys assigned to those divisions, and that's who handles most of the trials and going from there. In terms of charges that came in 2022, I do have some numbers for the adult side. In 2022, we had 4,157 felony charges come to our office that we reviewed. That is more than any other time in the last 10 years except 2022. So we're trending back down some. I hope that trend continues. For misdemeanor cases, we've had 3,913 charges come in that we reviewed in our office. Of all the charges that come in, we have multiple APAs that are looking at these every single day to review those. We also, in St. Joe alone, I don't have the statistics for the Niles office. In St. Joe alone, we denied 1,890 charges that came into our office, either for a lack of evidence, what happened wasn't necessarily a crime. We review cases, we deny those charges as just can't proceed forward for whatever the reason may be. There are numerous reasons. I think that goes to show that's over 20% of the cases that come into the St. Joe office are not authorized. 20% of the charges. I think that goes to show prosecutors are take their oath seriously to represent the community and do their job, be fair and just. We do not rubber stamp what police bring in. We take critical looks at it to make sure that we can ethically go forward on cases. So about 20% of cases that come in are not charged. I talked about the 22 attorneys in the office. We are a little short right now. I met multiple times with Mr. Doucette and talked about the hiring of attorneys. We did very blessed to have a part-time attorney start working in our office. You guys may have heard of him. His name is Mike Sepik. He has come back. He's missed us so much. He's been retired for 2 years, obviously my predecessor, but he wanted to come back, and we hired him mostly mentoring. He is going to be following younger attorneys into court, sitting with them during preliminary examinations, going over the cases prior, preparing them with them, doing the preliminary examinations with them, giving them advice, and afterwards helping them learn how to prep for trial. I am involved in that with younger attorneys. Jeff Taylor, the chief assistant, is also involved, and Courtney O'Malley, the chief trial, is also involved. But we carry dockets too. I'm not late for a docket with Judge Jancha. I will be there by 10 o'clock. I have some coverage for the early cases, but I still like to get into court. It's important for me to get into court, so we still try to maintain dockets, get into court, and do our job, because quite frankly, one of the best parts of my job is getting into court, working with survivors of violent offenses, victims in cases, and working one-on-one with them. It's something that I really truly love in my job. So, but Mr. Sepik is back at our office, and be quite frank, it's not only a mentor for younger attorneys, but he's just been a tremendous mentor to me throughout my career. And even the last 2 years, we meet every month for lunch, basically, and I always got a lot of questions for him. Some of the things for cases in 2022, we did a lot of trials, over 80 trials. I was told by Frank Samsel that we set a record for, it's not a good record necessarily, but for felony trials that we conducted. The paperwork that I got indicated we did about 66 felony trials, murders, robberies, sexual assaults. It runs the gamut. We did have a reduction. I know last year I talked with the board here on school threats. There was a large increase in that at the end of 2021 and 2022. Those are down substantially. Part of that goes to the work of Russell Sabowski, the chief of our family division, and then Elvin Gonzalez, the lead of the family division on the court side, developing new procedures to get those cases investigated quickly, figure out what's going on to make sure that any threats are handled appropriately and immediately. Those cases are down substantially since we instituted that process. And I think the summer break, obviously, from the last year going into this year also helps. So we're very happy about that. Just some of the violent crime statistics. Years ago in our community, Benton Harbor was designated as secure cities and got extra policing help from Michigan State Police. That's been a tremendous benefit, if you ask me. We do have issues in our community with violent crime, especially where guns are used. That's very important to me. We've tried to be very aggressive in doing that, but we are very, I say blessed to have extra units from Michigan State Police. Captain Brown is very invested in the community. The sheriff is very invested in the community. So is Director Dan McGinnis, and now Chief Abrams invested in the community to make sure we're dealing with that. For the Benton Harbor city itself, I only have up through 2021 from the secure cities and the statistics. From 2020 to 2021, violent crime increased at 0.4% for the Benton Harbor city. So it's almost flat, which I want it to decrease, obviously, but holding it flat, considering what's going on in some other places around the country, I think it's good. It's not good enough, though. Okay, and we're going to continue to work with all the partners and do better on that. From 2020 to 2021, there was a decrease in property crimes, however, in the Benton Harbor area by 31.5%. Okay, so that's from the MICR statistics for secure cities that was given by Captain Brown. Again, I mean, that's great. That is, I think that's a huge win for the people and for the community. However, we still want to keep going down and keep trending down. I believe a large part of that is due to an increased presence from Michigan State Police and the sheriff's units and the Benton Harbor City PD working together and collaborating. In 2022, the Crime Prevention Squad from the Michigan State Police pulled 117 illegal guns off the street. One of those guns, actually, we get those guns, we do NIBIN testing. Basically, when a gun is fired, it almost leaves a fingerprint on the casing. Every gun has very specific prints that it leaves essentially from the machining and tooling when the gun is created. On one case in particular, a gun was taken off of a gentleman from a traffic stop. It was tested. That gun, the testing of it matched casings that were left at a murder scene. We were immediately able to interview the gentleman, obtained evidence and convicted him for murder based on that Crime Prevention Squad's proactive policing and how they're doing their job. Hold a gun led directly to a murder conviction. So I think we're very blessed to have them here. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later too, in terms of some of our 2023 projects that we're looking forward to this year. A few other things about the 2022 projects. I continued to work with a lot of pastors in the area on expungement and violent reduction. We continued those with the new expungement laws. We worked a lot with the Benton Harbor Public Schools. Also, I worked with the former superintendent, Andre Townsell, about getting into schools more with the pastors. Specifically, we were targeting those going from 5th grade to 6th grade. So with the Michigan State Police and the Department of Public Safety at Benton Harbor with Dan McGinnis, worked at like an Adopta 6th grade. Fairplain Middle School, we were in there donating lots of school supplies at the beginning of the year. And we're trying to maintain that connection with them throughout the year and then throughout as they progress to 7th, 8th, 9th, and through high school. That's our goal with that. I continue to be in schools to talk about the dangers of cell phones and what kids are getting in trouble, how they're using the cell phones, what we can do about it. So far, just a rough estimate, I've probably talked with over 5,000 students in Berrien County. Our office will continue to do that. I've actually had two attorneys are going to take on this role in the future as I kind of step back from doing that in the schools. But every year I'm asked to go into certain schools and we've expanded to other schools this year too. So I'm excited to keep that going. 2022, we also worked a little more with Berrien RESA on truancy. They have a very good program. We used to have the Truancy Academy that is closed for now. But with the pandemic and schooling from home, we've had issues with truancy and it hasn't stopped necessarily with people getting back into school. That's important to me, obviously. Without an education, kids are going to be so limited in life to where they can go. And if you talk with the sheriff and the jail and people at the jail, probably the overwhelming majority, I'd probably say 2/3 don't have a high school education. Those are in jail. And that's a concern for me. So we want to really get into truancy and we're going to continue that through our family division. Proficiency testing with our drug lab is up and running. Our drug lab is tremendous. It's a benefit to this county. We are able to seize evidence, get it tested within a day or two. Critical to the drug trafficking that's going on, especially with the introduction, the overwhelmingly large amounts of fentanyl. John Rohrbeck does an outstanding job. He is top-notch, qualified as an expert around Southwest Michigan. So he is just top-notch to have him here. The other thing too, we don't have to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a turnaround from Michigan State Police. Okay, so that's why it's such a benefit to have that laboratory in our county. not only just for drugs that are seized on a case that we're proceeding on, but for search warrants and things along those lines, for trash pulls. We can get him testing. He will come in. He's done it before, tested in the middle of the night, so we can get a search warrant immediately to go seize more evidence. So some of the 2023 projects we're going to be working on, I will continue to work with expungement seminars with pastors and with Michigan Works. It's important to me, if the laws are out there to give people second chances, let's get them up and working. Let's get them jobs. There's a lot of jobs out there. It is impossible not to see a help wanted sign out there. So we want to get people out and working. So we'll continue to do that. Continue to talk with schools, talk with parents, like I indicated. We are still working on a prosecutorial dashboard to see what is going on, essentially, not necessarily almost in real time, slightly delayed, but what is progressing. We do not have the technological capabilities to do that right now. We are still on our old case management system that is DOS based. Yes. So it is beyond all decades old. I don't have the staff to run the numbers that we would need. It would just be an impossibility. With the new system, Equivant, that is supposed to go live September of this year, we should be able to have more real-time data for this starting in 2024 would be when I'd like to start doing that. That's one thing we're looking to do end of 2023 into 2024. Also, I will continue to work with pastors in the community. I met with Pastor Andre Palmer last month, spoke for a couple hours with him. I'll be meeting with the local Pastoral Alliance this Saturday at 10 o'clock. And it's going to be how can the pastors get more involved in the criminal justice system, and not only getting into the jails, which I'll talk more about with you, getting into the jails for forgotten man ministries, things along those lines, but also outside of that, how can they get into the courts to be supportive? Job training, pastors they want to be very involved with that too, which is critical. And then also violence reduction. So I'll continue to work with them along those lines and trying to get into schools to mentor young kids. That's critical, I think, as young kids need mentoring, need people to look up to as a positive role model. And that's important to me also. Along those lines, not only do kids need role models, but parents do too. I don't think it's, I'm very blessed to have a wife who is just amazing with our 4 kids. And did a phenomenal job, but it took 2 of us, more her, most of the credit goes to her, but to try and raise our kids. I know there are parents that need help out there. I have talked with Judge Mabel Mayfield and the Boys and Girls Club about a parenting peer program. And that's not something, a lot of these programs are not something the prosecutor's office will take on. We can't, it's outside of our lane of travel, but we can support and we can get behind and do our best to support that from ancillary support so we can get those programs up and running, because it does have a benefit for the prosecutor's office and the criminal justice system down the road. So I'm working with the Boys and Girls Club and Mabel Mayfield, Judge Mayfield, to try and work on a peer parenting type group. We're also for 2023 might be looking into, we're the very preliminary stages of this, a sobriety court. What is important about this though is if we already have the resources for it, do we need a specific court for it? So it's also how many resources are we're spread thin already. So if we can do what's necessary for a sobriety court with what we have, is it necessary to create another specialty court? I don't know the answer to that. I'm working with Judge Cotter. He's the chief of the criminal division. Amber Glenn Denning runs the local Department of Corrections probation office. And I've worked with some defense counsel also coming together to figure out, is it right for us? And do we have the resources to do it, to go for longevity for this? If it's going to be totally grant funded, can we rely on grants in perpetuity? No, we can't. We need to figure out how to do it fiscally responsible and have the resources to do it. So we're going to be looking into that. Again, that's the very preliminary stages of looking into that for 2023. Also, some other things that I'll be doing in my role, we have the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan, PAM. I've been involved with PAM teaching for years and instructing. I have been assigned they requested, but they really told me to do it. Assigned by Pam to work with the Supreme Court on the Trial Court Funding Commission to look at new ways to fund trial courts around the state. So I'll be representing Pam and the 83 prosecutors in the state about new ways to fund the court, how it will be funded into the future, to have it sustainable into the future. So that's one thing that I'll be doing with Pam. Also, I've been nominated to serve on the PAM Board of Directors, which will also have me involved more with them and different projects going forward around the state for the Prosecuting Attorney Association of Michigan. One thing I have to talk about with the commission, especially the commissioners who were here previously, in August, you were incredibly gracious to grant our office new positions, including evidence specialists. We have an immense amount of data coming in, cameras, video coming in every single day from police agencies. And I gave the numbers and how much data we take up and how the IS department is always not nice to me, deservedly so, about how much data we use. We had to have our own server just installed just for our office because of the amount of data we have. You were granting us evidence specialists. 2 of them started. I'm working with Mr. Doucette and Ben Reynolds and Doug James about spreading out the implementation of those new positions to be fiscally responsible. We had 2 started in January 3rd. They have been phenomenal. When I told the office about it, every prosecutor immediately was like a sense of relief. We spend so much of our time watching video that we don't have the time we need to be lawyers on the case. So when I told them about it, there was a sense of relief. But when we actually put it into action and now they're doing it, it's been tremendous so far. Morale is just such a boost. So first of all, thank you. Like, if I didn't thank you enough, I'm thanking you again now. That is tremendous for especially our young prosecutors when they're dealing with all this. I have some more of our tech savvy young prosecutors. We put together a form. It's going to be all digitalized in our office, just filling in the blanks, checking things. We get this form to the evidence specialist. We hand it to them. They take it and run. They're requesting videos. They're requesting old reports for us for, say, domestic violence, when we want to get old cases and look into filing motions on those. 911 calls, photographs, security videos from be it like Kohl's or even like Ring doorbells, things along those lines. So 2 of our younger prosecutors who are tech savvy are developing the form and developing the process. And it has been a blessing. So I appreciate you guys for that. I really do. I want to express that. One other thing that we've worked on really hard in Berrien County, and I think it's important to recognize, I quite frankly deserve no credit for this at all, is our overdose investigation protocol. This started with my predecessor, Mike Sepik, and our drug prosecutor at the time. He's now the chief assistant, Jeff Taylor. They worked very hard in developing a protocol based on some national standards, a lot of research. They talked to different agencies around the state, 8 years ago on this. And thank you to the sheriff and the Southwest Enforcement Team, the SWEAT unit, which is a collaboration between the Sheriff's Department and Michigan State Police for these types of investigations. Recently, I was told by one SWEAT unit that Captain Mike Brown, he's the 5th District Captain, wants us to take our protocol and expand it throughout the state because it works that well. Relatively speaking, is it perfect? No, and it can always be improved. I'm always looking to improve everything. But he wants us to talk around the state about this protocol to other counties, other districts of the Michigan State Police, and implement it in other states. So we will be doing that later this year. Again, that will be someone from SWEAT because they're very involved with it and are excellent investigators at it. And the chief assistant, Jeff Taylor, who helped develop this years ago. Not only that, in speaking with a detective from SWEAT, he was asked to speak nationally about it in October, I believe, in San Diego. I'll go. You can take me out to San Diego. That's cool. I'm good with that. I've never been there. I hear it's nice. But I think that just goes to show in Berrien County, we really try to stay ahead and do our best for all different types of investigations, be it domestic violence and our protocols for domestic violence and how we handle those cases, sexual assault, the Children's Advocacy Center. But this just goes to show one more that the overdose investigation protocol that we have is being recognized. And they deserve a lot of credit. Sweat, Jeff Taylor, Amy Bird, who does a lot of those from our office, also deserve credit for that. So I think you guys should know that. And that's not, and really that is just sweat equity. It's not additional funding or anything along those lines. That's just people in our office putting in the extra work to do the best they can. So those are just some of the highlights from last year and what we're kind of looking forward to going this year. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to chat. Actually, one more thing I want to talk about too is, sorry, no questions yet. In terms of violence intervention, I was fortunate enough actually to meet with Commissioner Pitchford yesterday for a community violence intervention meeting, kind of just very, very preliminary, where we can go. Met with Mr. Doucette and the sheriff and Under Sheriff Chuck Height about seeing what we can get in terms of state funding for new programs. Very, very beginning of that, but it's important to have that dialogue to figure out how do we reduce violence in our community and how do we reduce the use of guns in our community. I'm thankful for the Michigan State Police for being here. I am thankful they have a presence here. That presence makes a difference. But this is a dynamic issue that police presence alone does not solve the problem. Okay, it is more, you don't arrest your way out of this problem. You can't police yourself out of this problem. It's a dynamic issue and we need to have collaboration and solutions to try something different. And I appreciate Commissioner Pitchford reaching out and wanting to do this with Mr. Doucette also. Try new things. We might fail. I'm okay with that. If I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna try to fail quick, then I'll move on to try something else, to be quite frank. But we just can't have the status quo. So that's another thing that we're working on now for 2023 in terms of dealing with violence in our community. Now, any questions that I can help answer, be part of? If not,
So is the prosecutor's office going to have a team for the polar plunge?
yes. This, for the polar plunge, it is, oh boy, it's a heck of a, you don't have a picture, do you? You're not, oh goodness. The polar plunge is just an outstanding event put on by the gentleman at Watermark for Special Olympics. We've done it, I've done it since 2016. It's cold. Unfortunately, I cannot do it this year. We have a team. One of the younger prosecutors bought me, they added me to the team and paid the $20 for the 2 chicken to jump shirt. Like, thanks, great, appreciate that. I have the meeting with the Pastoral Alliance at 10 o'clock, and then I have swimming, soccer, and swimming on Saturday with family, and my family is family first, and my wife's out of town. So I will not be jumping, but we do have a team this year. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, but tremendous event if you can make it out to Watermark in February. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Freeling.
Just a question on the statistics.
Yes.
I know that you said that your caseload for 2022 was over 4,000 and that it was the highest it had ever been. Do you think that that is due to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my question is that due to the fact of the backlog that we had from the pandemic and the number of cases that the court's going through? So you're seeing that number
In terms of the trials, in terms of the number of charges that came in, those are new charges for 2022. That has nothing to do with the backlog. Those are new cases investigated by the police that were submitted to our office. So that has nothing to do with the backlog.
Gotcha.
In terms of the trials that were done in 2022, part of that is COVID related in the backlog. Our felony cases, we've done a lot of hard work to catch up on the felony dockets. Do we still have some old cases hanging around from the COVID time? I hate saying that COVID timeframe, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. From 2021, yes, we do still have some cases hanging around from that timeframe, and actually a few cases even prior to that timeframe. but we are catching up pretty substantially in the felony docket. Where we are lagging behind still is misdemeanor dockets. When we're trying so many felony cases under the court rule, the misdemeanors get pushed off, unfortunately. So those cases are getting more and more difficult to prosecute due to age, but we are still behind on misdemeanor sub. We're catching up on the felony. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I realize I took the wrong notes because I wrote down cases and it's charges.
No,
Understood.
no worries, no
Thank
problem.
you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Mr. Perangeli? Yes, sir.
About the 117 illegal guns that were
Yes.
taken, could you just speak for a second about ghost guns, switches, and what we're seeing locally with some of these extremely high-powered weapons?
What the types of guns that we are seeing over the last 3-4 years are very high-powered, some rifles, but pistols, handguns. What we're seeing, everybody's familiar with what I think an M16, the civilian model, is called an AR-15. That's a caliber of that is a caliber that is a .223. It shoots at a very, very high speed, over 3,000 feet per second, usually with a standard load. What we are seeing, those are not being shot out of rifles anymore, but they have what's called AR-15 pistols, .223 pistols now. So we're getting those high round, those high caliber, very, very lethal cartridges being shot from pistols now. In terms of the switches, that is a mechanism that is added to a standard pistol, semi-automatic. Semi-automatic pistol, you pull the trigger once, one round goes off. A new, the shell casing, the spent shell casing is ejected. A new unspent cartridge is loaded into the chamber and ready to fire again, but you need to pull the trigger again for that. Switches have made it, and they're 3D printed. They can be made out of aluminum. They're being mailed in. They're being made locally. That will turn a pistol. We'll just take like a Glock, for example. We see a lot of these with 30-round magazines put in them. You could, with a switch, it makes it a fully automatic weapon. You pull the pistol trigger one time, and it'll shoot 30 rounds in under 3 seconds, about 10 rounds a second. When we go to respond to scenes now, previously you might find 5 to 10 shell casings. We have scenes where we're finding upwards of 100 shell casings based on these switches that are out there. I'm sure you're probably all aware, we have an active detective group. We meet every month with the detectives, the FBI and the ATF, and I meet with them every month to determine different priorities and what we're doing. Last in December, there was a multi-jurisdictional raid, both here in our community and up in Kent County, with the federal government and the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Western District, Mark Totten. There were 8 arrests made, guns seized. It had to do mostly with these types of high-powered pistols and the switches being used, so for federal charges. So we are working not only state charges, which we take aggressive stances on, but we're working with the federal authorities too, and when we can build that case, and that was a case that was over a year in the making, proceeding federally on those charges too. So we, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of these guns are high-powered with extended magazines and even drum magazines, which can hold 50 to 100 rounds at times. So the potential for lethality is only increasing. Does that answer your question, sir?
Thanks again to Prosecutor Perangeli. We're into committee time now, so let's break, come back at 10:30. If there are no public comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if there are no public comments, that is. And we don't have any other business. We're adjourned at 10:30.